Hello, everybody, and welcome to Forever Sports. In what's been quite a hectic day of news, an interesting update: Lood de Jager has officially had his intention to appeal denied and will not have a second hearing after the Springboks confirmed last week that this week rather, that they would be appealing the decision handed down to Lood de Jager, which has seen him being banned for 3 games. He already served a game suspension last weekend and will be out for this weekend as well as next weekend. And in theory, should he complete tackle school, which is kind of a given, will be available for the start of the Japanese Pro 14 or Pro Top League season. However, the Springboks on Monday confirmed that they would be obviously challenging the Franco result red card. That was going to be happening anyway, because every time there is a red card, there is a disciplinary hearing. And the boss confirmed that they would be saying they would not be admitting it to a red card. They would be challenging the decision, and that they will be fighting for basically a downgrade on that. And they also confirmed on Monday that they would be appealing or asking to appeal the Lood de Jager red card. And Rusty Ruster spoke about the fact that we've been losing in the boardroom in the last few weeks with regards to the Jan Hendrik Wessels case, for example. Maxwell Mapimpi currently suspended, Lood de Jager, Franco mastered, etc., etc. So what happened is that we've got confirmation from the Autumn Nations series that he appeared before an independent appeal committee last evening via video link to lodge an appeal against his initial sanction for an act of a power play contrary to Law 9.13 in the match between South Africa versus France. The independent appeal committee was chaired by Christopher Quinlan, and joined by Roger Morris and Becky, Essex from Wales and England. On review of the case that was sent to the Disciplinary Committee and having considered submissions advanced on behalf of the appellant, the appeal committee dismissed the appeal against the finding that he committed an act of foul play which merited a red card, and also against the suspension. Basically, they would have wanted to basically appeal and sort of restated their case with a different panel. However, this has been dismissed. And it's quite interesting. You can actually go onto the Autumn Nations series, sort of disciplinary decisions, and there's actually you can actually download the entire full decision. And it was quite interesting reading about it, because when he appealed in front of the panel, it was himself, it was Jaco Paper, it was Felix Jones, it was I think he had a legal representation as well, and there was also a representative from My Players, basically. So they were it's a big team. It's not just a case of Lood de Jager goes there with one person and has his say, for example. It was quite a lengthy decision. And what was quite interesting is that Felix Jones is part of the whole World Rugby sort of the head contact. I think there's a whole sort of basically committee looking into sort of head contact injuries. And Felix Jones basically spoke about the mechanics of tackling and the mechanics of what a shoulder charge looks like, and the whole palm facing up versus palm facing back, etc., etc., and what the mechanics are in what's considered a shoulder charge versus what's considered a tackle with a wrap. And that was one of the sort of big sort of hinging parts of the entire sort of appeal, was the fact that his actions were all correct with regards to going low, with regards to where his palm was, for example. It wasn't, and basically they say if your palm's facing backwards, for example, that's the shoulder charge, versus when your palm's facing up or flat, for example, or even down but facing forward, in terms of that wrap coming through. And you think about the action, if you go into contact like that, where's your palm versus where's your palm versus where's your palm versus where's your palm? And if your palms are down based and facing backwards, you're generally, you can't come to wrap. But if you watch them train, and we've got the videos on the channel, they very much move like this. They shuffle across, and then from there they go in the tackle. So they very much teach and coach the palms and the hands here. And in fact, it was quite interesting. There was actually a stat released in the week. I couldn't find the actual image, but statistically, the Springboks make the most low tackles. So they make the lowest tackles in World Rugby. They go the lowest statistically in terms of low, medium, and sort of chest above tackles. The Springboks, I think, almost make about 40 to 50% of the tackles they make are sort of waist and below. So that is a coaching thing. The Springboks are actively being coached and being and going out to deliberately tackle low. And that was what was quite interesting with regards to the appeal. Now, I think that there was just so many things going on. I think that there was obviously this sort of that shoulder-head contact, and I think it was always a bit of a Hail Mary appeal, to be honest. I mean, I think the suspension itself, it's always for me a bit convenient that it was obviously the exact amount of games left in the international season, the likes of that. to start at a high end, I think was a bit harsh. But the entire process was a bit of a magnifying glass into what is considered a shoulder charge and foul play. And that's where Felix Jones basically, spoke and said, these are the mechanics. This is what we work in. And they kind of then asked him, well, based on that, is it shoulder charge? And he says, but look at where the palms are and the whole thing. So it was quite an interesting sort of step-by-step process in which they looked at where the foul play was. And now it's been dismissed. And I think a lot of this was not just... I think this was always a 50-50 appeal. I don't think we were... In fact, I don't even think it's 50-50. I think we were always going to struggle to overturn this decision. Obviously, Franco Mostert won much easier. But I think this was a lot to do with the fact of finding their reputation. The Springboks, for example, at one stage had a really bad disciplinary record. And then they went to the 2023 World Cup, where they did not receive a single card throughout the entire group stage. I know, because I asked this question to Rassie Erasmus, and he said that it was very deliberate. And that's why they brought in Jaco Paper, is to try and make sure that they are within the laws at all times, and they are actively coaching that. And that's where the frustration is, the fact that we've received 3 permanent red cards this year, we've received some bans and the likes of that, because if you look at the mechanics and you look at the behavior of the players, in both circumstances, we've got 2 very tall players that are trying to go low. They are not upright in the tackle. And in that regard, it's a completely different situation to where you see shoulders going upwards, for example, into faces where players are upright. Ty Burn, for example, being upright. And whereas these 2 instances both are players who have dropped their level of height, who are going in low, and from a mechanics point of view and an intent point of view are trying to get as low as possible, because that's what the Springboks are working on. Now, Lood de Jager, I think there were lots of different factors. I think Kobus Reinhardt played a part. I think Thomas Ramos' shift in height played a part. I personally think there was a lot of mitigating factors in the whole part. They spoke about an arm, for example, preventing his arm from wrapping, whether that was going to make that big of a difference. But the fact of the matter is that Thomas Ramos was so close to the ground, massive change in height. Lood de Jager was going down, and he also had a massive change of height. I mean, he's probably at half of, he's about just over 2 meters tall. He's making the tackle at just over a meter, really. So there's a massive attempt for him to go low. Gets it slightly wrong, and now we're at red card territory. Similar with Franco Mostert, he's a tall player who's gone low. And I think that's where the frustration is that there's an innate intention from the box to go low and to tackle low, which is the big shift from World Rugby, to try and prevent head contact. And yet we're still sort of being pinged for it. So that's where I think a lot of the appeal is trying to create the narrative and control the narrative of the fact that we are doing what is being expected of us from a tackle technique point of view. And the fact is that, if you're following the tackle technique and if you're following the right steps, but things and incidents are still happening, then that becomes a very big grey area with World Rugby, because now you are penalising and suspending players who are doing what they're expected to do and are being punished regardless. And that was the big problem with Franco Mostert, is that in theory, he's done everything right in that tackle. I still maintain, I think there is an attempted wrap. I don't think he gets all the way around, but he's not shoulder charge. And that was the big thing that Felix Jones spoke about. The difference between a shoulder charge and not wrapping is where your palms are facing. That is a shoulder charge versus, that, or even over there, if your palms facing backwards like that, then your arms are coming around. But as soon as your arm's sort of there, it's an extra action for your arm to try and come around. So it's interesting. So the fact of the matter is he's lost the appeal. But the fact that we appealed it, I think, was a further step with regards to trying to understand what the parameters are and where players are being punished for what's their actions, and kind of what the behavior and the expected behavior is, and whether if we get the behavior right and we're still getting punished, where do we go from here? So I think it's an interesting case. I think both will be interesting cases moving forward with regards to what is considered foul play, where there's the mitigation, and as the laws continue to evolve, to kind of basically address these sort of situations and these type of concerns. So let me know what you think down in the comments below. Smash the like on the video, subscribe to the channel as well. Thank you very much for watching. My name is Steve, and I'll chat to you soon.